Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another restful episode of true, scary stories to help you fall asleep. Today, we are going to be reading stories of UFO sightings. I hope you enjoy them. So for now, without further ado, lay back, relax, and enjoy these true, scary stories. You can believe me or not. Honestly, I won't be surprised you won't believe me, because nobody I've told this to has believed me anyways. This happened when I was around 9 years old, and I was sleeping with my mom. I woke up at like 2 a.m., and I was really thirsty, so I go over to the table to the bed, and I grab my water, but I just hear a bunch of weird sounds. Then I just see a UFO, and I swear on my life I saw a UFO. Obviously, I couldn't record it, because I was frozen in fear and shock, and I didn't have a phone at the time, and I just see it fly past. It was hard to sleep after that, and I was wide awake for a while, about an hour, before the drowsiness finally beat me. After that, I told people about what I saw, but nobody believed me, which kind of annoyed me, but it was whatever. I never really let it bother me too much, but at least I have a story for someone to read and enjoy. I just want to share one of the craziest experiences of my life. Sadly, I didn't record it because I was petrified. I couldn't move. If it wasn't for my friend, actually, I don't know what would have happened to us. So this takes place in Shepherd, Michigan. I was visiting a friend, and this is the country. Like, middle of nowhere. Small town, dirt roads and cornfields. We were bored, obviously, and it was late. The sun was setting. So we decided to take a walk to downtown, a small strip of restaurants with the only paved road. It took us about an hour to actually get there. I want to point out, I didn't see anything in the sky yet. We're at a park on the edge of this downtown. There's 1 or 2 sheriff's vehicles. Can't remember clearly. This happened about 5 or 6 years ago. We've only been there about 20 minutes or so. She explains to me that there's been car hoppers, and police have been searching for them. I think at this point I heard a helicopter. I honestly thought it was funny that police would be going all out with a helicopter looking for some car hoppers. I'm more from the city. Okay, to get to the point. We get up and head back home. We're turning the corner, back onto dirt road, passing this police car. I can't tell if anyone is even inside. There's fields on both sides of this road, and a forest in the distance on my right. Immediately we notice the UFO. It took me a second for my brain to register what I was seeing. But there, low in the air just above the trees, was this rod-like thing hovering in the air. Best I can describe it is, it was the size of a bus or two, and almost like a rod lying at a slant in the air. There were 2 green lights on each side. These lights were very bright and saturated in color against the darkness of the country. No light pollution. So I have my flashlight out so we can see in the dark. As soon as I realize I'm looking at a UFO, I go to get a picture. And before I can do that, this thing starts spiraling towards us like a fan. This giant rod-like thing is spiraling right at us. You can hear the wind whipping against it, and a helicopter somewhere out of sight. And I just freeze, unable to react or understand what's happening. Just pure terror, wondering if this is going to crash into us. It doesn't make sense. My friend pushed my hands down, still holding my phone and the flashlight away from the sight. Immediately this thing stopped, repositioned itself and began slowly moving away, not very far above our heads. I could see lines on this thing. The helicopter was here now, right in front of this thing, guiding it away. Right over downtown, too. The only place where anyone would witness this. Totally inconspicuous. We stood there for maybe a minute or two watching this, in awe and terror, and I regret so much not recording. Just to be able to watch this event again, and maybe catch something new that I didn't catch before, or share with others this truly terrifying experience of mine, so they can understand exactly what I saw. But all I have is my memories. I don't know if anyone else had made calls of this, and maybe that's what the police were there for. There was a police car just at the corner, parked in an old car repair shop facing the wrong way. And I don't know if anyone downtown, just around the corner, was outside to witness this, but it was clear as day. So if anyone else was outside here, there was no missing this. It's crazy because I didn't see anything at all in the hour walk. This thing just arrived at this field in the 20 minutes or so we were at this park. And I think the only reason my friends could think rationally in that situation is because she didn't believe in UFOs and tried saying that it was some kind of police aircraft afterwards. But when I explained to her exactly what she witnessed, that we don't have / aren't supposed to have zero gravity technology, she got quiet. She definitely became a UFO believer that day. Once when I was a kid, I saw what I can only describe as something alive in the sky. Don't get me wrong, I've told this story to plenty of people in my life, and not a single person even gives me a shred of belief, so I don't expect anyone here to do any better. But I gotta share this to see if anyone else has had a similar experience. Around the age of 8 or 9 years old, I would often get sent to my grandparents' house to just be babysat on the weekends. So, when my grandma would run errands, she'd have me come with her. To be honest, I don't remember anything that led up to the moment, because it was so long ago. But at some point, she had taken me to Rite Aid to pick up a prescription. At the time, I was heavily into UFOs and the supernatural, so my eyes were always fixed on the sky. And I remember this aspect clear as day. I looked up. It was perfectly clear out, and I saw what I can only describe as a living purple cloud / flesh thing. It was circular, looked like it was a flat disc, but had several rings going back in depth, with each ring holding a claw or tooth of some sort, and moving at different intervals. Of course, I tried to get my grandma's attention, to which she dismissed me because she was already talking to the person in the pharmacy window. I kept my eyes fixated on it for the whole time, until it was out of sight. To this day, I've never seen anything similar, heard of anyone who has heard of anything similar, etc. And not a single person believes me. I really don't think it was a dream because of the level of detail I remember. But I had to tell someone because it still freaks me the F out to think of what it looked like. This is my dad's story, so here we go. My dad and his friend lived in a suburb of Modesto, and they liked to go out and run around at night. Well, one night they were out in one of the orchards, and they lit a firecracker and they were about maybe 150 yards from a house. So they started running off when the hairs on the back of their necks stood up, and they turned around and saw a triangular-shaped object float out of the trees. They turned around and hightailed it out of there. Then it started coming towards them. It chased them till they jumped into a drainage ditch and hid. They watched it for about 2 minutes and started running back to his friend's house. It started to chase them again, and they made it inside of his friend's house and saw it still hovering, and then it just shot off. They also saw it a few more times and actually have a video of it hovering over the neighborhood. TLDR, my dad and his friend were chased by a UFO. I'm glad I found this subreddit. I've lived a strange life to say the least, and I'm glad I have a place to unload all of these stories that I don't want to forget about, but can never really talk about them. So let me start off with a simpler one, but one that I still have questions about to this day. During my time in the game, I was at one of my spots. It was me, my homie, and my homie's girl. It was a slow night, so we were just kicking back, hanging out, when we all got the warning alarm on our phones, the one that announces Amber Alerts and severe warnings, etc. Well, there was a big, bad line of storms rolling in, and yep, right on cue the wind picked up and the rain started. After about 10 minutes into the storm, the lights go out, so me and my homie are on the porch checking out the rain and lightning, when flash and crack, lightning hits the street about 50 feet away from us, or so it looks. Us gangsters, us tough guys, both let out shrieks like scared women and ran inside. It scared the hell out of us. Homegirl starts yelling that she's trying to watch something on her phone and for us to go into the other room. That's when I remember the window was open in that room. So me and my homie go in there to close the windows. When I open the door, the room is filled with light. Not like a bright light, but like a bluish white light. I look outside, and it seems like there's a spotlight shining in the house. Now it's pouring outside, and I'm thinking maybe someone had a flat tire out on the street behind us. Or it's the cops getting ready to kick in the door. So I get closer to the window and just yell out, "I can see you too." And my homie there got scared, thinking we were going to jail. But through all the rain, I can see that the light isn't coming from the street behind us. It's coming from the very back of my yard. And it's a big yard, so the light had to be pretty bright and nice size to light up the room the way it was. I get the chills. My homie still thinks it's the law, so I get my phone to zoom in with the camera picture, and guess what happens? I'll give somebody $5 if they can guess. Correct. The phone died. I get the second phone and try to do the same thing. Lo and behold, that phone dies as I load up the camera. Now it could be that maybe they weren't charged, but I always had my phone charged. So now both me and my homie are scared. And I yell, "What the heck? Who is that?" And this light turns red and kind of starts moving up and down, increasing in redness and brightness. So for the second time in 10 minutes, me and my homie are screaming like little girls, running back to the living room, and that's when we noticed the homegirl was not there. You could see her phone there, but she was nowhere to be seen. Then she walks out of the kitchen. But she said she went to the kitchen to look for the portable charger because her phone just died all of a sudden. We tell her to come here and take a look at the light, and of course it wasn't there. Now I've heard that UFOs like thunderstorms, that they recharge or something. I also hear lightning can knock them out of the sky. But then I think, well, maybe it was a kid out there playing with flashlight or spotlight in the middle of this severe storm. As far as the phones go, maybe the lightning that struck nearby created some sort of energy, electric disruption of some sort. Maybe the ball was like ball lightning. I'm not sure what it was, but that was a scary night. So I'm going to start off by saying that I'm quite nervous to post this, as I feel like I'll get killed by the government or something. But I remember like 4 to 5 years ago, I was walking outside with my cousin. We were out for around half an hour until we looked up and spotted something in the sky. There were 3 red dots moving around. They were very bright as it was very dark outside. They were moving very slowly at first, but as we got a closer look at it, it shot off at an insanely inhuman speed. Me and my cousin both looked up at each other confused as to what it was. I'm also a big believer of alien/extraterrestrial life because of this event. After it shot off, we tried to find it again because we were intrigued as to what it was. After about 10 minutes of looking, we came across these concrete steps near my home, and we sat on there trying to look for these lights. And I can say, this hand on my heart, this is so effing true. As we looked up, this thing that I am convinced is a UFO at this point is literally a couple meters above us. We both ran in absolute fear trying to get away from it. We ran to a little arch and stayed there until we thought it was safe to come back out. I haven't seen the UFO since. Every time I go out, I think about what could happen if I do see it again. And I remember my cousin going missing for like 5 minutes, and I couldn't find her anywhere. And when I found her, she had told me she doesn't even remember wandering off. Creepy stuff, right? But the weirdest thing about all of this is that we both saw completely different shapes of this UFO. I saw a circle, where she saw a rectangle. But in all honesty, it was too close to even think about what kind of shape it was. I still sit there and think about what it could have been. I've only told a small handful of people, as I'm very paranoid about all of this UFO stuff and aliens. But I felt like I needed to share my experience. Feel free to let me know if anyone has had any similar experiences. I cannot tell if this was a bad thing or a good thing that has happened to me, or whatever the object's intention was, or even the life that was in the object. It still scares me today. I also tried speaking to my dad about it, and he just brushed it off like it was nothing. The small handful of people who I've told say they believe me, but I think that they just think that I'm some sort of insane person. But I can swear this is a true story. I don't think it's something I can just make up, and neither could my cousin. So I don't know if this is real, but when my mom was younger, when she was like 10 or 11, she said she saw a UFO. She said that she saw on the news a big orb thingy fly across the sky. The lake was the lake my mom lived by. She went outside and saw it. She screamed for her dad and brother, and they grabbed their shotgun. When they went outside, it had been a few minutes. Then they ran in screaming. The UFO was right on top of my mom's house. All the lights went out. The TV did the static buzz. A few minutes later, it left. After the UFO left, everything went back to normal. It's been over 30 years, and I'm still scratching my head over this one. Like I said in a previous story, I'm from the Gulf Coast of Texas, and while I live in a medium-sized city down there, the surrounding countryside is known for all sorts of strange and paranormal events and sightings. I personally don't believe in alien visitations. The energy and resources needed to visit our planet, even coming from the nearest star system, would be insane. I believe that there is life out there. I just don't believe that it's paying us visits. Still, I was definitely spooked when I was outside after dark at the age of 9. My family lived in a second-story apartment with a large front yard and a parking lot in the back. The lot and yard were connected by 2 breezeways that passed through the building's first floor. The streetlights were on, so the entire area was bathed in an orange glow. I was alone when something made me look up at the dark sky. Due to the light pollution, no stars could be seen, so my eyes easily zeroed in on the flashing light that was traveling across the sky in a vaguely northeast to southwest direction. Oh, I thought, it's just a plane. I could see a flashing red light and a steady white light as the object approached my area from behind the apartment building. I watched it slowly get closer, and I noticed something odd then. Due to unlucky genetics, my long-distance vision has never been that great, so an object as distant as a plane, even a low-flying one, should have been fuzzy and indistinct. Yet this object was fairly clear to me. I could see the light shining on the underside, could see the briefest sight of whatever shape the flying red light was mounted on it as it blinked on and off. It occurred to me then that for me to be seeing it so clearly, it had to be very low. Low enough that I should have been able to see it better. Enough to see lights from the city reflecting off of it. Yet, outside of the areas illuminated by the object's own lights, there was nothing but blackness. It was almost as the rest of the object wasn't there at all. I started to feel a little creeped out then, and it was then that I noticed something else. The object was completely silent. No engines, no whirring propellers or fan intakes, no rotor blades chopping the air, just total silence. Even jets passing over at 35,000 feet can be heard if one is in a quiet enough area, so I should have had no problem hearing this. As it closed in on my location, the hair on my arm stood up, and I was hit with the need to hide. I had to get out of sight immediately. I ducked in the nearest breezeway and went halfway down so I could only be seen if this thing landed, which I hoped and prayed that it wouldn't. I stayed there for several minutes until I worked up the nerve to peek out. It was gone, and I ran up the stairs and down the walkway to my family's home, where I told no one of what I had seen. In 1998, myself and two friends, Alicia and Amy, decided to vacation in Lake Havasu, Arizona for spring break. We set out for our road trip in Alicia's Ford Tempo and stayed the night at a friend's place in Las Vegas before continuing our journey. The next day, we were about 40 minutes away from our hotel near Lake Havasu when this creepy encounter occurred. It was around 11 p.m. as we drove through one of the many mountainous areas leading to our destination. The roads were curvy, and the night sky was pitch black, with no other traffic helping to illuminate the area. Alicia slowed down to 25 miles per hour and was being extra careful when we came up on a semi-truck who was also traveling at a slow pace. Rather than try to pass him on the dangerous road, Alicia slowed down even more. Suddenly, a blinding white light appeared out of nowhere, causing the truck to swerve and veer off the road into the dirt. Alicia jammed on the brakes, and we stopped 20 yards or so behind the truck, easing off to the side of the road. The three of us sat there squinting, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Suddenly, the truck's driver's side door flew open, but we never saw the man climb out. Then the radio dial in Alicia's car went crazy and started scanning through a bunch of channels before turning to static. As we all sat there breathless and in awe, the light zoomed away, leaving us again in darkness, with the exception of our headlights and the truck's red brake lights. We exited the car and tentatively began approaching the semi-truck to see if the driver was okay, and to discuss the insane thing that we had all just witnessed. The driver was gone. We called out, "Hello," numerous times, and took a flashlight to look down the side of the mountain, which was on the right-hand side of the truck. It was a steep hill, but there was little vegetation, so we were able to see everything as we scanned the area to make sure the driver hadn't somehow fallen out of this embankment. We shined the light inside the open driver's side door of the still running truck. Nothing. This man had completely disappeared, yet none of us saw him leave at any point. We got back into the car and waited another 5 minutes before yelling out one more bout of hellos and finally giving up. In hindsight, we probably should have called the police when we got to town, but we didn't. We just checked into the hotel room, once contemplating whether or not we should drive back to the site and see if the truck was still there and still running, but we were all exhausted and never followed through. During the next 2 days, several issues occurred with Alicia's car. It had been in good working order before the incident, but now was having a host of electrical problems. The radio continued to go berserk. The doors would sporadically lock and unlock themselves. The automatic windows refused to work. And on our drive back to Reno, the engine just shut down out of nowhere and the car lost all power. After letting it rest for about half an hour, it started back up and we were able to get to a small roadside shop to have them take a look and test the battery. They said everything seemed to be in good condition and were stumped as to what caused the problems. As we were getting ready to leave, Alicia started the car, but went back inside briefly while Amy and I sat in the car. Once again, it lost all power. Before we could exit, all of the doors locked, and the little metal spokes would not budge. In 100-degree heat, we were all trapped inside the vehicle. Thankfully, the mechanic had a tool to unlock the doors, so we were able to exit. Once again, he inspected under the hood, but could find no reason for all of this. A few minutes later, the car started back up. Thankfully, the rest of the trip home went smoothly. The car never experienced such issues again, with the exception of the wonky radio dial changing on its own. So what do you guys think? UFO sighting? Air Force or government activity? What about the guy disappearing from his truck? Let me preface this by saying I'm only a slight believer in the paranormal or extraterrestrial. I do believe these things probably occur, but I've never seen overwhelming evidence with my own eyes to confirm it, aside from some odd things that have happened around my neighborhood at night the past couple of weeks. It all started about a week ago. My girlfriend and I lived together at my parents' house, as we were both in our early 20s and not exactly to the point in our lives where we can fully support ourselves. We like to sit outside at night as it's the summer, and we enjoy smoking weed every now and then. Due to this, we have to wait until my dad goes to bed to go out, which usually ends up being about 10 p.m. We like to sit out for about an hour or two just relaxing, talking, and smoking, enjoying the summer air. We've done it for a while and never really saw anything too odd until about a week ago. It was a normal night mostly, not too hot or cold, as we were smoking and on our second bowl. It was probably around 12 a.m. midnight when I noticed a light out of the corner of my eye in the sky. This was pretty normal as we live just outside of a large city on the eastern United States, and there are plenty of airports around us. I thought of it as just a plane and went back to my girlfriend so we could smoke some more, but the light just sort of stayed there, not really moving or anything. It got to me after a few minutes, and I finally looked to her and asked, "Do you think that light there is weird?" She looked over to it and nodded instantly. "Yeah, I've noticed it for a few minutes now, but I just tried to ignore it." I nodded and was relieved that I wasn't the only one, but I didn't want to look like I was afraid, so I tried to ignore it again until it started moving like a second later. We were both freaked out. I didn't want to look. I almost had to. It got closer and closer. It was super low in the sky and was just coming right over our house. I was almost holding my breath as it got closer. It was crippling me with fear, as I was pretty high at this point, so I was already more freaked out than I would be normally. It looked triangular from what I could tell, with colorful lights all over it. Then, as it was right above us, it kind of looked like it transformed out of thin air to look like a plane. Believe me, I was freaked out, but I was willing to believe it was just a normal plane, and that I was just seeing things. I knew my girlfriend was freaked out too, so we finished the bowl quickly and went into the house. It wasn't until the next day that we actually talked about it. She was convinced it was some kind of UFO, but I was apprehensive and not so willing to believe it. The day went on, and then at about 10:30 to 11 p.m., we went back out a little more freaked out but kind of curious. Again, at about 12 a.m., we saw a light, just like the one the night before, and this time we both noticed it at once. After it came across the sky, it paused for a second, then slowly kept going along in the direction it was. "Get a video of it," my girlfriend blurted out as I nodded, and got up and started filming. It was just capturing the light moving across the sky, and then she started filming on her phone about 10 seconds after. I was starting to get uneasy, so I stopped filming a few seconds after she started, and then the freakiest thing I've ever seen happened. The light in the sky changed directions, and instead of going across the sky, started coming towards us, just like the night before. This time, we didn't stick around as my girlfriend stopped filming, and we grabbed all of our stuff and ran in the house, locking the door, and going up to our kitchen, waiting there for like 5 minutes. After that, I went out in the dining room and peered out the window. There was nothing there in the sky, so it either just passed over us or changed directions again. We were super freaked out after that, and we stayed in the house for the next few nights to avoid going insane over anything. Then, a few nights ago, we had the TV on in the background, and it was on the news. They were talking about how the Department of Defense, as well as SWAT, have been doing training drills in the sky at nighttime around the area. Me and my girlfriend just looked at each other, and were almost relieved after we started to wonder if that's what we had been seeing, or if maybe it really was something else. Okay, so this happened when I think I was 7, but maybe 8. I live in Washington State, which, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't have a ton of reported UFO sightings. But I believe what I saw this night was one. So it was around 2 a.m. when I woke up for an unexplained reason. I'm not sure why I woke up, I just did. Then, maybe a minute later, I noticed a super bright light starting to fill my room. It was almost as if a car was shining its headlights in. But I lived on a secluded road in the middle of nowhere, and my room was on the 3rd floor, so that theory is almost impossible. Now, you would think that this happening to a child would startle them, and I was a pretty easily scared kid, but for some reason I felt nothing but intrigue. I walked over to my window and looked out. I could not make out where the light was originating from, but my entire front yard, which was pretty big, was lit up like it was broad daylight. As I was looking out, all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Not like when you're scared, but like there was a ton of energy in the air causing static. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the light just vanished. The hairs on my neck laid down and everything went back to normal. Still to this day, I have no idea what that was, but I strongly hope that someday I might find out. Hi everyone. This incident occurred in 1984 when me and a friend of mine were on a 10-day backpack hiking the Ray Lakes Loop in Kings Canyon National Park. It was the last day of the trip, and the following day we had about an 8-mile hike back to my Jeep at Grants Grove Trailhead. We were camping close to Bubbs Creek Trail Camp, but if you were daring enough, you could cross a creek over a large tree that had fallen across the way. It was fairly safe, only about 20 feet across, and only about a 6-foot drop into the water, but it ran fast and deep and there were rocks, so you really didn't want to fall in. And you made sure to unbuckle your backpack to throw it off, just in case you happened to take a spill. We knew there was a good camping on the other side of the creek, because we had done previous backpacks on this trail before. We also knew few people crossed to that side of the creek to camp. So, we crossed the creek, and set up our tent in a cool spot we had camped at before. It was located right on the edge of the forest, with a huge meadow in front of us. We went separate ways looking for firewood. Wood was plentiful, and in a few minutes I had returned, and I was just about to get another armful when my friend burst through the bushes into the camp. He had no wood, his face was drained white, and he was wide-eyed. "What the hell's going on?" I asked him. "A deer charged me," he said, and I could see that he was really scared. "What? Come on, deer don't attack people," I told him. "I'm not lying," he insisted. "A huge buck charged me. I threw my wood down and ran back to camp." Well, I thought he was BSing me, but eventually we got a fire going and cooked dinner. We were sitting around the fire and it was just before dusk when, lo and behold, this huge 10-point buck came loping out into the meadow, followed by his doe. "That's him," my buddy exclaimed, and we both jumped up looking at this huge buck. He was staring us down and started walking closer to our camp. He didn't seem to be afraid of our fire, and he closed to about within 60 feet. I was dumbstruck. I've been hiking, camping, and backpacking since I was 12 years old with my brother, and I had never encountered anything like this. I picked up a large piece of firewood and smacked it upon the hollow log I had been sitting on, thinking it would scare him away. This may have not been the best move on my part, because the buck started pawing the ground and then began sauntering towards us. In the moment, me and my buddy were just frozen in fear, thinking, "Oh crap, what do we do now?" We only carried bear spray with us, and it was not handy at that time. I would say the buck was within about 30 feet when he broke into a full charge, and then immediately he turned and galloped into the forest with his doe chasing after him. We just looked at each other, scared out of our wits, like, what just happened? But wait, that's not all. After we calmed down and it got real dark, we were just sitting out enjoying the stars, and we were still talking about that buck. We were kind of enclosed by the 1,000-foot high canyon walls, but they were set back a ways, so we had a great view of the night sky. I think we both saw it at the same time. Coming over the lip of the canyon was a bright, steady, glowing white light. Now, it was really high in the sky, far above the canyon walls, and its altitude was indeterminate, but it appeared to bob and zigzag across the sky as it moved along. It kept a forward direction, but it would slow and then move at an angle, then speed up and move back across and then slow again. We were both mesmerized watching this light weave its way across the night sky, and it was definitely a solid object, obscuring the stars behind it as it passed. We were asking each other as it crossed the sky, eliminating what it possibly could be. It wasn't an airplane, a satellite, or any natural phenomena, at least none that to this day I am aware of. We thought it may be a helicopter, but surely, even if it were 1,000 feet above the height of the canyon, we would have heard it reverberating against the canyon walls. It was absolutely silent. When it was directly overhead, I became acutely aware that this object was also aware that we were watching it. And at that moment, in my mind, it felt either sentient or it was controlled by something intelligent. A chill went down my spine, and I distinctly remember feeling a shudder go over my body. We were stunned into silence as we watched it move along and disappear behind the opposite canyon wall. After it was gone, we both looked at each other. We asked each other, "What the hell was that? What did we just see?" To this day, I don't know what we saw. Now, I'm not saying it was an alien spacecraft, but it definitely fit the description of a UFO. It was definitely a solid object. It did not look, behave, or move like anything conventional or anything natural. I don't know if it had anything to do with the strange behavior of the buck earlier that same night, but my friend won't talk about it. In hindsight, the whole night just seemed strange, like we were out of place in our reality as we know it. When I think back and take into account all the theories and hypotheses of physics regarding the possibility of other dimensions, multi-universes, and even perhaps that we live in a simulated reality and computer code, I tend to believe we both experienced a glitch in the Matrix. Something definitely strange and unexplained happened that night. It does not matter if anyone believes me, and frankly, if it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't believe it either. In fact, sometimes I question it myself, but it indeed did happen. Other than telling this story to some close friends over the long years, this is the first time I have ever publicly acknowledged this. I look at it like this. Each of us as individuals can only make determinations from what our senses and our consciousness makes from our unique individual experiences. I can't explain it, and I'm not trying to convince anyone else to believe it, because it did not happen to you. It just happened. I have other strange things that have occurred to me at my house. I may follow up and post these experiences later. I hope this night finds everyone well. Okay, so I never thought I would post on here. I'm a lover of paranormal stories, and I've been on this page too many times to count. I just read one that reminded me of this experience I had, and just had to share it, because so far, no one has believed me except for the people that were there. It was about a year ago, during the summer, so July or August. I think August. And I was at a bonfire with a bunch of people. Most of them had left, so it was just me, my then boyfriend, now ex, and 4 of his friends. We were all sitting around the fire, just talking and hanging out, and all of a sudden, it was like the sun had just come up over the sky. I'm currently in the car talking with my parents, so I'm kind of multitasking, so sorry if this story is hard to follow. But it was so weird. I don't even really know how to describe it. And I didn't realize at first that night basically turned into day so fast, but also gradually, like someone was just turning a light on, but one of those dial lights. I'll never forget my ex's face when we both realized what happened, which is how I know I'm not hallucinating. My ex never believed in paranormal stuff at all, and he would never lie, and was always a level-headed person, but this spooked him, which is how I now know that I saw what I saw. The next minute, we all looked towards the ocean. I had to turn around because my back was to it, and we saw a light rise up and hover over for a few seconds and then shoot over us. I couldn't tell you what it was, and I've looked it up on the news for a whole year, here and there. I know what I saw, and I know that the other 5 people that were there saw the exact same thing that I did. I don't know if it was a UFO or a governmental thing or something paranormal, but all I know was that I had this certain dread in me that whole night, and I refused to leave my ex's side. I don't get scared easily, but there was something about that I just can't shake. I'm not in touch with any of the people anymore to ask more about it, because my ex and I ended on bad terms, and they were all his friends. But I'm hoping that someone can tell me what I saw. I know it's pretty far-fetched, but at this point I need some answers. I live around the east end of Long Island, New York, in the Hamptons, and I just need some answers. This happened to me in the summer of 2017. Me and my family had just moved into a new house in Arizona, and we didn't have blinds on our windows yet. On about the 4th night of living in the house, I was up late playing video games on my phone. It was about 1:30 a.m. when I happened to look up and out of my window. I see what seems like strange yellowish light that's very round. It's definitely not a star, airplane, or helicopter, and was completely stationary. I stare at it in complete drowsy terror for about 5 minutes. Then it started to dart around in random directions. I hid under my blankets for a good half hour or so. When I looked back out the window, it was around 2 a.m., and thankfully the light was gone, so I went back to playing my games. Then again at about 2:30 a.m. I looked out the window, and there it was again. But this time it seemed closer and or bigger. After a few more minutes of staring in complete horror, I crept into my sister's room, whose window had the same view as mine. I woke her up freaking out, and I was going to take a picture of it when she sleepily said, "If you take a picture of it, they'll come for you," then fell back asleep. I slowly lowered my camera and crept back into bed, not daring to look out the window again. I never saw the light again, and to this day I don't know what it was. Could have been a drone or a UFO for all I know. My sister also says that she has no memory of what she said that night. I don't look out windows after dark anymore. I was driving to work a couple of hours ago. I'm at work now, and I saw a very bright dot in the sky west of where I was driving. It began to have a tail on one side, so I thought it was just a commercial jet caught in sunlight and just looked extra bright. Then I noticed a tail on the exact opposite side. It resembles a pulsar, but obviously it was an aircraft of some sort. Saw the tails coming out like hands on a clock, with the bright dot in the middle. Then the tails got bigger. Then the dot began moving towards the lower of the tails and reached the bottom, and there was a slight turn to the trail and it flew off. I am unsure of what I saw. This happened in north central Ohio. I was heading westbound towards Indiana on Route 2, just before I reached Sandusky, Ohio from the east. The trails were south by southwest. At least that's the direction my truck's GPS indicated. This was about 5:45 p.m. About 15 or 20 minutes ago, my friend and I were looking at the stars through a telescope when he taps me and I look up. There was a large V-shaped looking object in the sky moving fairly fast and silent, wild for how close it seemed. I could make out a few lights underneath and towards the back, but they were not on. It was very dark, and I could just see the outlines of what looked like lights on the bottom. It cruised for about 20 or 30 seconds, then disappeared. I had to post and ask if anyone saw it as well. This was near Aspen Grove Shopping Mall looking southwest, and the UFO was moving east. Okay, so I'm on top of a hill overlooking the city. First, I thought it was a shooting star, but it was just too near, then it disappeared. Later on, just about 30 seconds later, there was a big, white, dull light or sphere that left a subtle burn when it ran around in circles, and told my friend about a ball of light moving in the distance, brushed it off, and told me it was a firefly. It got quiet, and I had to look for my phone inside my bag. Then my friend shouted and told me something is going straight up in the sky, and then we both saw a big ball of light probably 20 times faster than an airplane, and too fast to climb that altitude in a matter of a few seconds, and then it just faded away. I think we both knew what we saw. About 6 or 7 years ago, my two best friends caught a video of a square-shaped UFO hovering above one friend's house. 4 white lights are visible in each apex of the square-shaped object. I'm curious to see if anyone here can share pictures or videos with me featuring a similar-shaped UAP. For added validity, I'd be more than happy to share the video. This sighting took place in southern Maryland, more specifically, Calvert County. I've seen multiple UFOs throughout my life, but I feel compelled to share this one with you all. It was May 15th, 2022. There was a lunar eclipse that night. I was outside looking at the moon, and I saw a huge pyramid moving through the air slowly. It was camouflaged to look like the surrounding night sky, stars, and clouds. I could see a thin line in the shape of the pyramid. It was faint, but it was there. My only thought was that whatever technology they were using was good, but it was faintly noticeable at the spot where the technology ended and the sky began. I was in disbelief and was doubting what I saw. I was so engrossed by the whole thing that I didn't even consider taking pictures. I just stood there with my jaw on the ground. A few minutes later, 2 fighter jets came flying overhead. They were flying low with minimal lights on, and they sounded abnormally quiet for how low they were. Edit. This was in Washington State. I have literally had more encounters with UFOs in my life than I can count on my fingers and toes. Some of you may not believe that what you're about to read is real, and that's just fine. All I can do is give you my God's honest word as a man that this occurred. So I've had a lot of encounters in non-urban areas. This is one of my few sightings in a city. One summer day around 3 to 4 years ago, I was on my way to visit my Uncle Charlie. I was going the normal route that I always took, with all the ups and downs through a neighborhood road to get there. This day, as I was visiting him and driving through the different dips up and down in the pavement, I reached the top of one, looking slightly off to the side, and thought to myself, that's awful far away from the airport for a plane to be flying that low. What I initially saw was a tubular object that I confused for a plane. I went down another hump and back up, gaining and losing sight of the object as I did. But as I came up the largest hump, there it was, your classic cigar-shaped UFO. This craft was so close to me at this point that the clear view sight that I had of it, that I saw more detail than most of these encounters. As I can describe, it was maneuvering near double treetop level, around 400 to 500 feet in length, and about 150 feet in width, at its fattest, tallest/lowest point. Its 2 ends were slightly tapered down, giving it that end of the cigar shape on both ends. It was metallic in color, the way an unpainted metal airplane would be. In the fattest/middle portion, I could clearly see windows, like on a passenger plane, except much larger and spread out. In one of these windows, I kid you not, I could make out 3 from the shoulder up humanoid figures standing and looking outwards beside each other. I could make out the silhouettes of shoulders and heads, but couldn't see any features on faces or any clothing attire. It wasn't that close, but close enough to make them out. Then came another few dips where I quickly lost sight of the object to reach the top of the hill at a stoplight where everything was more wide open. I quickly thought while stopped at the red light, where could have something that close to me and big disappear off to so quickly? Just as I was thinking that and panning the sky, I caught a glimmer from the same craft. But at this time, it was already hundreds, if not a few thousand feet in the air, continuously accelerating upwards and away. It got to where I could barely still make it out, its cigar shape, and just stopped in mid-flight. Hovering there, it released 3, small at that distance, neon red and green colored balls/orbs of light from the left end. I have no clue what their purpose was, but they moved away from the ship to the left and began circling around each other, faster and faster, as if building up some type of energy before returning to the cigar-shaped object. Then, almost directly as the orbs returned in a hurry to the craft, the ship took back off, picking up unrealistically immense momentum as it disappeared completely out of sight. I'm happy to have gotten this experience written down. When things like this happen, for some reason, you second-guess yourself about what you have experienced, even though you know for a fact that you had an encounter. I hope you enjoyed the read. 12 years ago when I was 26, I was running with my brother on a busy avenue. It was about 10 o'clock at night. When we looked forward, we saw a few people looking straight up to a treetop. When we slowly approached, we looked there too, and we saw what they were seeing. There was a ball of white light, the size of a baseball. It was atop of a tree, and I first thought it was a light of a street lamp. But then the ball of light started to move. It slowly circled the tree once and stopped. Suddenly it flew upwards very fast, in a straight line up into the night sky. It was so bright that we could see it getting far away for a long time until it disappeared. My brother and myself, as well as all of the people around us, seemed stunned and confused. Then we started to move, and everybody silently moved on to their own business. After that, my brother and I tried to figure out what happened, and he pointed something interesting out. The ball of white light was very bright, but it didn't cast any shadow around, and neither it casted any kind of light to the ground. To this day, we wonder what that was. I saw some similar videos on YouTube. Have you guys seen anything like this? Somewhere between 1982 to 84, I was between the ages of 8 and 10. My father owned a 32-foot sailboat he kept in the New Orleans marina. I've done a few sailing trips with him. We had left out of the marina early because it takes all day to sail across Lake Pontchartrain to Bayou Lacombe. The lake is 24 miles across. We are several hours into the trip and nearly across the lake. We were somewhere between 2 to 3 miles off the coast when I spotted something just over land ahead, but to my left. My dad's friend was along, and he retrieved the binoculars. We each took a look, and when it was my turn, I said, "Is it a UFO?" I got a few laughs, and they said they don't know what it is, but it's no weather balloon. What I saw was a shiny chrome-appearing footballish shape, raised a bit more on the top and bottom in the middle, like you would picture a cockpit window to be. Except there are no windows, motors, propellers, no sound. It's just hovering there. I remember something odd about it. It looked so crisp, like it had a black outline around it. It was just over land, maybe 100 feet above the ground, We were probably the only people to see it. It stayed there so long we got bored of keeping a watch on it. I'd say from initial spotting to when I realized it vanished without a sound was 20 minutes. We didn't really discuss it at all that trip, except maybe as a joke. After being deceived about Santa, the Easter Bunny, etc., I wondered if this was one of those adult tricks, and UFOs were fake or some other weather phenomenon. I remember getting home and telling my mom we saw a UFO. My mom smiled and she looked at my dad, who nodded his head yes. I don't think she ever talked to me about it. I repressed that story forever because I didn't want to appear foolish. But I know what I saw, and I know that it wasn't from this world. I grew up experiencing the paranormal as early as 4, seeing spirits, my recently dead grandparents, and having strange dreams. When I was 12, I was sitting in the passenger seat of the car with my dad driving. There was a sunroof. We were driving on Route 78 in daylight. It must have been 2008. I'm unsure of the time of year. No snow. I looked up in the car. There was a UFO flying right above the sunroof. It was a giant saucer. I remember saying "look, Dad," and pointing up over and over again. He just smiled and kept driving. The saucer was still above us. Pretty close, like it was following our car. That's all I remember. My dad is a believer, but he has no memory of this at all. Fast forward to 2020 between 9 to 11 p.m. in Pennsylvania, at the bottom of the Pocono Mountains. I was with my husband, 2 brother-in-laws, and a sister-in-law. We were outside on a small airstrip. We saw 2 UFOs in the sky blink, and it was like they were teleporting around in the sky, bouncing from one location to the other. I'm not sure if it was one UFO traveling fast or 2 close to each other, but I definitely saw them. I can't seem to ever get a good photo of these events, so I try to paint them to remember them. And more paranormal things go on pretty frequently. This year we moved to upstate New York, and my dad and I have seen many crafts flying in the sky late at night. I saw one just the other morning on Thanksgiving. I am so grateful for this subreddit, because no matter how crazy I sound, it is a place to share experiences. Thank you so much for listening to all of the stories in this video. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope that you get an excellent and restful night's sleep. I also hope that you enjoy the rain at the end of this video. Good night, everybody.